Yo, yo, yo. Welcome to the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, always brought to you by Keats Barbershop, located in East Rochester, Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Smitty. With me, as always, my co-host, Drew. Joe, what's going on, fellas?
What up, brother?
It's desperation time already. It's not feeling great. If you drafted running backs early like I did this year, shit sucks, bro. I hate myself. I could have had Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Jamar Chase. What I do, I took Najee Harris and Joe Mixon. Like, come on, get out of here with this nonsense. I hate my life.
Yep. The zero RB drafters. How do you think they're feeling?
They're all over Twitter just ripping everybody, and it's annoying as hell.
Although, if you took like Kyle Pitts early as a zero RB drafter, you're probably not feeling that great either.
Imagine if you took RBs and Kyle Pitts.
Oh,
And you lost to Tyler Hurnley by less than a point this week. Yeah, it's a great time.
And let's just segue this into our first thing, talking about injuries. And you drafted Trey Lance late, thinking that he had the rushing upside to be kind of like this year's Jalen Hurts.
Are we just talking about me all day?
Yeah.
Yeah, and me. I literally, so I'm in 4 leagues. I have combined 1 win through 2 weeks.
See,
You're welcome.
I'm not even that bad. Like, I drafted a lot of running backs, and Kyle Pitts is my number one of the year, and I'm still like sitting pretty just because Carson Wentz and my quarterbacks have been carrying me. But yeah, Trey Lance's injury was brutal, gruesome, lack of a better word, sad.
And he tried to stand up, and
yeah.
then went back down.
Yeah, it's Dak Prescott 2.0. Broke his ankle. Honestly, I'm kind of worried about him in terms of dynasty as well, just because this is going to be 3 years in a row where he's not playing. He lost his last season at North Dakota State, where COVID year. Last year he sat behind Jimmy G the entire season, and then this year he gets hurt 5 quarters into a season. Like, it's a concern.
He's played 11 football games. Well, he played some last year, obviously sitting behind Jimmy G, but like started right and fully played 11 football games in college too. So yeah, he hasn't played a lot of football. And
there's something that came out today. It was like he started 2 games per year for like the last like 3 years. Like, there's something absurd. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
it's insane.
It's tough. And honestly, this completely changes your entire outlook for the San Francisco 49ers offense, which obviously we know it's going to be a lot more rushing ability for Jeff Wilson, which is obviously really good. Tyrion Davis-Price has a high ankle sprain to add on to that, so he's going to miss probably 4 to 5 weeks. So it's Jeff Wilson, and they just signed Marlon Mack today, which is obviously with Jeff Wilson. He's played like 10 games since 2020 himself. He could step in, or Jordan Mason, obviously the guy.
Jordan Mason's the other back that I thought about. Yeah.
So you got to keep all of these guys on high alert, because the way the 49ers, as their luck goes, there's a new injury every week with them, and it just sucks.
Ricky Dunks, one of always the first guys in here, actually had a question. We can keep going with the injury stuff, but we try to get to these as soon as we get them in here. Hey guys, how's it going? Curtis Samuel worked his way into my weekly lineup. You're welcome for that. Trying to put in a waiver claim for Jacoby Myers, somebody we talked about actually right before we started recording this. I have Javonte, Swift, Brees, Akers, and Eckler in that league.
Man,
reading Akers' name in that was kind of like that meme where it's like the clown with all the military guys.
Yeah, he did get some work last week, though. I was surprised.
He bounced it out.
Yeah, they bounced it out, which was tough because, like, looking at the week 1 stats for Henderson, it was like, all right, Henderson seems like the bell cow guy. And then week 2 happens, and it's like, all right, like, it's surprising. We thought that it was going to be more of a bell cow situation going into the year, that Henderson was actually going to be the lesser of the two. But it seems like it's going to be a lot more of a committee than maybe we were initially expecting. I don't know. Is there a question here? It just seems like he's flexing on us right now a little bit.
Well, yeah. So then right after he said going to be trading one of those for a wide receiver eventually. I think because we were talking about just like the running backs, like taking them early, or like how many you have.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But it was interesting too that he said Jacoby Myers. We were literally just talking about him right before we started recording. He's only owned in, I don't know what the ESPN was. You might have said that, but only 36% of Yahoo leagues. So
Right.
He's
Yeah,
somebody for
Jacoby
sure.
Myers, somebody I'm really high on. Not to derail the injury conversation, but he had 13 targets last week against the Steelers. He has had a hard time finding the end zone the last couple of years, but he has
Yeah.
a really good matchup. The Baltimore Ravens secondary is absolutely pitiful right now. So Mac Jones is looking at having a really good matchup, especially if you're in a 2 QB league, even though he hasn't done anything really of note. But I really like Myers this week. I don't really get into the DFS stuff because the 11 leagues already stressed me out enough. But Myers is somebody that would be a must-have if I was going to do some DFS plays. I think he's going to have a monster week.
I was so thrown off when I saw like the little logo by this comment. It's because it came from somebody on Twitch, which like we've streamed the show on there the like since we started doing it for season 2 of this. But like I don't know that we've ever gotten a comment from it, and it just completely threw me off to see that little logo there. But that's awesome. We also have more viewers, it seems like, this week than typically, at least to start. So would you trade Brady and Judy for Pittman or Debo?
Who would you rather have, Pittman or Debo, out of that deal? My philosophy in a 2-for-1 deal is that you always want the best player that's out of all of those. Brady is looking washed. I don't know if it's that diet finally caught up to him, the looming divorce that's sitting on him, but the dude looks like a skeleton. He looks like Father Time's finally caught up with him. I have Brady in a couple of leagues, and I'm honestly contemplating dropping him. So if you can turn around and get Pittman or Debo out of that, I'm all on board. I think what we saw from week 1, that Michael Pittman is going to get the ball a lot from Matt Ryan being the quarterback. He was completely dominant in the target share, and they honestly don't really have anywhere else to go with the ball in Indianapolis.
Last week.
Debo is going to take more of the work in the running game because of the injuries. We saw that last week. Brandon Ayuk, we talked about it on the show, like who was going to be the biggest beneficiary of the injury. And it turns out that Brandon Ayuk led the team in targets last week. They still have George Kittle coming back. So to me, if it's choosing between Pittman or Debo rest of the season, I'm going to be taking Pittman here.
Yeah, so it sucked that Pittman didn't play last week because I had just put him in that. I'm not going to say what we're calling it. We still haven't figured out exactly what we want to title the player that we're going to be pounding the table for. We're not rolling with the name that Drew wanted to, but Pittman Jr. was my guy. I'm not saying it. Pittman Jr. was my guy that like I just love the Matt Ryan to him connection, even though Matt Ryan is so washed, and honestly, that might be like the worst team in football through 2 weeks is the Indianapolis Colts. But just in terms of Pittman Jr., like he's still going to get his on a week-to-week basis, and there's not many like true alpha number 1 receivers like that have so much separation between the 1 and 2 in an offense. Like Michael Pittman Jr. is the guy in Indianapolis, and there's no doubt about it, regardless of who else is there. I know that we were kind of high on Paris Campbell this last week, is like a DFS play. That didn't work out, obviously. Don't know if he was even on the field. He was part of the all cardio team. So
yeah, I think he had 2 targets. It was pretty ugly.
Yeah, but I see people talking about dropping Matt Ryan as well. I mean, yeah, see ya. But they also mentioned, who do you think would be the best quarterback to pick up, assuming that they are dropping Matt Ryan? I mean, if Carson Wentz is still out there, sure. I don't know that Tua still would be at this point, but if he were out there, obviously.
I will say going into this week, Tua has a horrible matchup against Buffalo. Buffalo looks like an entire buzzsaw in real life and in fantasy football. So it's like, if you have Tua available, obviously you want to pick him up. Mike McDaniels is completely throwing everybody through a loop of what we thought this offense was going to be capable of. I'll totally crow on that. I don't think that Tua is going to throw for 400 yards, 6 touchdown passes every week. But if you think about what they said going into the season, it was like, all right, we are really focused on running the ball 30 times a game. And then it was like, okay, well, that doesn't sound good. On the one hand, their pace of play is last in the league right now. But on the flip side, this is a good thing for Tua, as well as Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So in both games, he's had over 30 attempts and 250 yards, which is going to be that threshold that you need to support both of those as a top 24 wide receiver. So they're both pretty high on that list because of that outlier game last week. I don't think that they're going to have that level of output every single week, but they do have that capability to make that happen. So Carson Wentz has been slinging the ball around a lot as well, so I think either one of them are going to be great pickups for you if you can get them. Other than that, though, somebody that we talked about before the show is actually Jared Goff. 256 yards, 4 touchdowns last week against Washington. He's a little bit more dependent on the matchup because Detroit's running the ball exceptionally well. They're leading by over a yard for running back yards before contact. So they're averaging almost 4 yards a carry before contact. Like, their offensive line is absolutely insane. It's very reminiscent of the years that he did well for the Rams, honestly. And having an alpha like Amon-Ra St. Brown, they have a lot of different targets that they're using week in, week out. If you can't snag any of those first two guys, then in a matchup particular situation, I don't think that Jared Goff is a bad pickup either.
Yeah, where Jared Goff came in, I mean, he was definitely so if you guys didn't notice as well, we updated the ticker to include more players. I mean, kind of everybody does a top 10 that does a fantasy show. Obviously, we want to get a little bit more expansive on that and give you some more options farther down, because if you have a top 10 guy, you really don't have a decision to make each week. But I believe Goff probably came in here. If he didn't, he was just outside. No, he did. Tied for 13 with Brady this week. Who does Detroit play?
Detroit has Minnesota this week.
Minnesota. Oh, yeah, they put up a great performance against Philly on Monday Night Football. So. Oh,
yeah, Captain Kirk, champion of the primetime games. It's pretty intense.
So between Wentz or Tua, if Derek has the choice between those two to pick up, which one would you guys be leaning towards out of those two?
Tua. Since I haven't talked like at all this entire show, I forgot that I was on it for a second.
You're just a spectator.
Yeah. You saw what Tua did last week. Do you even have to say more? Essentially what's happening is Waddle's going underneath, Hill's going deep, and they're making the safeties choose which guy they want to cover, and whichever one they choose, they're going to the opposite side. So that's just how it's been. It's going to continue to happen. I know you're worried about this matchup with the Bills, but I'm not. I have him in several DFS lineups already because I just think that they have to throw it a ton to keep up with him. So I could see Tua throwing it 50 times this week and put up a really good score. You're not expecting him to score 60 every week, but he has a real shot at 25 to 30 points, in my opinion.
Well, the other thing is too, I think Tua would be the better option for season long, but he could play Matt Stafford this week, and then go to Tua if he's really worried about that Buffalo matchup.
Yeah, Matt Stafford is playing Arizona. Their defense is terrible. I think regardless of if you were to pick up Tua, I would be starting Stafford either way. They're being given the 4th most points to quarterbacks through the first 2 weeks, and that includes a game against Marcus Mariota, so that should establish some confidence there. So 28.9 points. Wentz has like a middling matchup. Philly's only given 18.4 points per game, and then Buffalo's only giving 12.1 points per game to quarterbacks. So I'm happy for those guys. It looks like Wentz is having a little bit of a return to form. Tua may finally be being the player that everybody thought that he could be when he was getting drafted. But I think for this week in particular, I would still lean Stafford over either one of those two.
Also, I like this comment. We should rename the all cardio team the all George Pickens team.
97%
of the snaps he played.
I
don't like it, but it's creative.
He had a catch though, so we can't make a meme out of it.
I missed the catch, like the only catch that he had in the game.
I clapped.
Did you have to?
It's hard to see because of all the sun.
I just assumed it was right before halftime. I thought that they were going to run out the clock like the Steelers typically do, not try to actually do anything before the half. So I got an early start to go. Yeah, get a water.
Before we move on,
yes,
I didn't get a chance to chime in earlier, but if you're without Michael Pittman this week and you need to go with a Colts wide receiver, I picked him up right before my matchup last week and started him. But Ashton Doolin, he was getting a lot of targets. He ended up with 5 receptions on 7 targets for 79 yards. Obviously, Matt Ryan was terrible. The whole offense was terrible. But if you have one bright spot out of this game, Ashton Doolin stepped up, and he could be someone that's probably owned in less than 1% of leagues that you can just throw as a Hail Mary.
Okay. Yeah, don't even know who that is. So
he was the best player on Colts' offense yesterday or Sunday.
Like you said, you even alluded to it. When you're in the stadium watching game, you miss pretty much everything else that's going on with those other games in that same slate. So
Yeah.
The only thing I knew is I won money because of the Jaguars winning. That was literally the only thing I knew about those 1 o'clock games.
I had a 5-leg
Really
parlay
good.
with the Jags, Cardinals, Saints are the ones that killed me. It was plus 15,000. Yeah, I had Dolphins over Ravens.
Wow.
Well,
all right, let's get back on track here with some injury talk. Obviously, Thursday Night Football last week, Justin Herbert visibly in a ton of pain, gutting it out. It was pretty hard to watch at one point. Like the one where he didn't take off when he just had like a couple, he could have just taken like 2 steps and had a first down, and then he just throws a rope the very next play.
Yeah.
But obviously going to he has a little bit more rest before their next game. But is this going to impact him going forward? And if so, it obviously has a huge impact on his playmakers as well.
Yeah, so he has a rib cartilage injury, which is the most ironic thing that could ever happen in football. So this is the same injury that Tyrod Taylor had that led to him having his first start. And that doctor that Tyrod Taylor is suing is still the lead doctor of the Chargers. So he's going to be sitting here and he's going to have the decision if he wants to get that pain injection or he just wants to live through it. And just either way, if he's going to go on the field and not have that injection, he's going to be in a lot of pain. He's not going to have the adrenaline flowing the way he did on Thursday Night Football, and it's going to bother him for sure. If he takes any hits, there's nothing really you could do besides having a flak jacket and hope that that's enough. But if he doesn't get that injection, I'm worried about it.
Man, that's gotta suck to be that doctor, right?
Yeah,
like he's got everybody's gonna be looking at him. Like they kind of wanted it to happen to Tyrod, probably. They're how can we make this happen? Not that he probably did it maliciously, but I was like, oh, okay, we got Justin Herbert. Like if they knock him out now,
if he punctures Justin Herbert's lung the way he did Tyrod Taylor, he's gonna get blacklisted. He's never gonna be a doctor for anyone ever again.
Tyrod just won his case right there.
Yeah, all dozen of the Chargers.
He should win it either way, honestly. But that's speculation.
Yeah. But so I dropped him in my rankings a little bit. I don't know where either of you had him. I think he was my number 6. But if you just go based off matchup, he should probably have been 1 or 2. But I am a little concerned with how he's going to handle that and the pain management that's going to come with that. Also, I don't know that it's necessarily a foregone conclusion that Keenan Allen returns for them.
Right.
So. I mean, Mike Williams obviously balled out. They have some other pieces. Gerald Everett's been a nice surprise at tight end. If I would have known that he was to be wearing that dark face mask and wearing the number 7, I would have had him in my top tight ends to start the season.
Yeah, I would have drafted him over Pitts probably.
Yeah. But, I mean, for me, I dropped him a little bit in my rankings due to that. He still obviously came in our top 10 collectively, but I think that is something to monitor. And I think, with Cody saying, do you consider starting Joe Burrow over him if you have both those guys?
No.
They have a very similar matchup. I don't think that I have the confidence in Burrow right now. He's been able to support the receivers pretty well just because of the volume, but Burrow is very much a guy that may have a splash week here or there, but if he's gonna he's probably gonna be at the low end of the QBs, to be a QB1. They don't throw the ball enough in Cincinnati for him to have just the volume of yards. It's really reliant on big plays from the receivers. And additionally, they are also one of the slowest game scripted teams. Zach Taylor doesn't like to really play with tempo, so it just limits the number of plays that offense has. Also, Cody said he went 6-0 this past week. So
yeah, I saw that earlier. I wasn't going to acknowledge that, but thanks.
I got you. That's
maybe
my boy.
He should be on the show.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What happened to wait. Speaking of Cody Coleman and shows, what happened to the spread? You guys remember that show he was doing last year before kickoffs? What happened to that?
I loved it.
I was enjoying that. Yeah. What in the world happened there? I traded Diggs and D-Hop for Eckler and Debo. Who won?
When you lost,
with a bunch of question marks.
Very difficult to say that you won with how he's playing.
Oh man,
that's tough.
You almost lose by default for using emoji question marks.
And then some exclamation points, and then more emoji question marks.
I mean, I feel like I might. Go ahead, Drew. I'm sorry.
I think that Diggs obviously blew up mainly because Gabe Davis being out. I just think that they don't have any other pass catchers out there that they give a crap about. So all those targets went to him. He's still obviously really good, and he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver. But last night's game wasn't really realistic of what he's actually going to be when Gabe Davis is on the field. It's just facts. It's just
I don't know, man.
it's
Gabe
not.
Davis got 4 targets in week 1, but turned into a broken play. Well, actually, it was a really incredibly designed play. I just have never seen those in the last 3 years, so I forget. But
How many targets did
Gabe
Diggs have last night?
Let me see. I think he had 13.
I just feel like he's in the
He had
9,
14 last night, and he had 9 in week 1.
but I feel like he's like the 9 to 11 range with Davis there, but he's also not scoring 3 touchdowns. Or did he have 3 touchdowns right now? 4.
He had 3 touchdowns. He single-handedly recovered Trey Lance and my entire team disappearing last night.
Right.
It was magical.
Yeah,
they combined Allen and Diggs for 85 points.
Yeah, he's gonna have games like that, but it's not gonna be consistent. But the thing is, though, he's so good, and Eckler has been so bad, and Sony Michel's been on the field way too many times. So I'm like,
well, I mean, the big thing with Eckler is he scored 20 touchdowns last year, and that really buoyed him. His usage hasn't really changed all that much, but the offense hasn't really flowed through him, especially in the red zone. You're not really seeing the attention that he got. I think he's a pretty big bust. However, it's what do you guys, I think really the wild card here is what happens when DeAndre Hopkins comes back? Does he have any ability to return even 80% of what DeAndre Hopkins was before? Because he kind of seemed like he was washed last year. So, do you think that he comes in and is the alpha over Marquise Brown? I don't know if that happens.
He's not the alpha over Greg Dortch. Respect Greg Dortch.
I mean, I don't feel great about either side in this deal, so I would say it's pretty even. I think that Eckler will have a little bit more of a return to form. So I'm going to give the slight edge to the Eckler-Debo side, but I think Diggs is the best player in the trade. So it kind of goes against everything I said 5 minutes ago.
I actually missed the Debo part because of all the question marks. So
this is why, Joe, you're doing it right though. You're finally getting the whole podcasting thing. You say one thing and then you contradict yourself later in the show. Whichever one's right, that's the part that you clip.
Well, generally, whenever you're making a 2-for-1 trade, you're giving 2 mid players to try to get somebody that's better, or a good player and then somebody that's just a throw in. To get to, it's 2 weeks into the season. I'm still into the. You don't need to panic just yet. I mean, look at the bounce back that Cam Akers had last week. Is he going to live up to his 4th round ADP? No, but he didn't also get goose egged either. So I think the teams are still trying to figure out what works for them. You'll see a lot of things kind of shifting around, and it really takes 4 or 5 weeks to really figure things out. So if you can even get through this early phase at around 500, then I think you're in good shape. Because really, if you're 7-6, you'll probably end up as a playoff team in fantasy, and it doesn't matter. There's no home field advantage. It doesn't seeding is meaningless. So as long as you're coming in hot going into the playoffs, it doesn't matter. But to get a 1st and a 2nd round pick for a back end 1st round pick 2 weeks in, to me that seems like a little bit of an overpay in that regard.
We got a comment from Jared that had nothing to do with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, so I'm just happy about that first and foremost. I didn't know that anything happened with Jerry Jeudy, so
So
he left in the first quarter. Yeah,
I think he has a bruised sternum, and I think that he's going to be fine.
Say he's not on our injury list here, Drew.
Because I think he's going to be fine.
You're setting me up for failure.
I'm pretty sure he's going to be fine. I'm pretty sure he practiced today. And it's all good. But do we trust Russ enough to even put him in your lineup? Because the dude's more worried about playing defense from the sideline than he is about actually scoring points on the field.
Yeah, I think he's been helping his wife make a music video or something. He's not with football right now. He's not there.
He's honest.
And their coach stinks. He should be one and done.
He is a terrible coach. Terrible.
He's Russ is the corniest dude ever. He's the type of guy that you think is a natural leader, but he's actually just faking the whole thing and just looks awkward as hell doing it.
It
so we're actually
worked great in Wisconsin.
Yeah, we're just gonna keep ripping Russell Wilson and not actually answer anything about Jerry Jeudy. I still start him this week?
I wouldn't start him unless you don't have anything better. I don't trust that offense right now. And last week he was Cortland Sutton and nothing else essentially. Obviously,
Jeudy left in the first quarter and had 3 targets, which is a pretty healthy share. But as soon as that happened, then it was everything is getting thrown to Cortland Sutton. But so Jared's pretty much saying because of the Keenan Allen injury, he threw him in his flex. I didn't have. So San Francisco has been dominating wide receivers. They're only giving up 27.4 points per game. That is currently Do the math, 29th in the league. So I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him this week. This offense looks horrible. The 49ers have been pretty great defensively. So if you are still holding on to San Francisco because they had a pretty easy start to the schedule, that's only improved even more now because Denver's offense looks like crap. So I would not be playing any players outside of Javonte and Cortland Sutton. And even then, if I had better options, I would consider sitting those guys as well.
I don't think Keenan Allen's going to play again. It's obviously a hamstring. It's day to day. You just got to watch his participation in practice. But like, it was a pretty significant hamstring injury from what I read.
We did put him at wide receiver 27 on the Fritter ticker if he is able to get out there.
I didn't rank him.
Yeah, I would say you probably did.
Yeah. I don't think he's going to play. But
okay. Also, Cody Coleman was trying to plug some stuff here. I mean, you know, we like these guys, so I guess we could flash it real quick. There you go.
Oh wow, I'm running out of free money on what's the thing that they're doing the Scott Fishbowl satellite tournament on? Fantasy Dog or whatever.
Underdog.
It is. Underdog, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So I might have to tune in so I can make the most of that other $25 that I have left.
Drew, anything else? I know that we have Dalton Schultz and James Conner on here, but I don't know if there's really any clarity in terms of what those injuries are or if they should sideline them at all.
We got clarity today on Dalton Schultz. So he has a PCL sprain, which that's something that Zeke played with essentially all last season, but obviously you saw he wasn't as explosive as a player, so it's probably going to impact him. He could miss time, but he might play through that. I'm still worried about that. I'm a Noah Brown guy in that offense right now, obviously, so we'll go with that.
Makes sense. One of the best receivers in the league.
Yes. From Ohio State. James Connors has an ankle injury. A lot of people are going to rush to the waiver wire for Darrell Williams or Benjamin. I'm staying away. They were a 50-50 split once Connor went down. I still think Connor's probably going to play. I think that if the game, if he needed to come back in the game, he probably would have. And the Cardinals offense looks terrible. It's just Kyler Murray basically playing hero ball the entire time, and it's just not sustainable. So
it's like playing Madden 04 with Mike Vick. He just runs around until the defense gets tired, and then it's honestly impressive to watch. Like that 2-point conversion was absurd. He ran like 80 yards in that play.
It's actually like Madden for Roethlisberger when I jack his speed up to 99, just because I think it's more fun.
Dude, it's hilarious though watching Kyler play football, just because he's so little, and like just watching his legs move as fast as they do.
Cue Eddie commenting on that later on about how Kyler Murray's like you.
Yeah, I mean, there's some photoshops out there, me on Kyler, Kyler on me. It's.
I like what I'm hearing. Can we please move on?
All right, let's talk about some week 2 headlines. I like where we're starting off with this as a Kyle Pitts owner. The first one just says screw Arthur Smith. So
Drew, the floor is yours, baby.
I know you're very passionate about this.
Arthur Smith said, "It's not fantasy football. We are trying to win."
What's their record?
0-2.
What's their record under Arthur Smith?
0-2. What pick did Kyle Pitts go in the draft last year in real football? 4. Like, this guy's such a douchebag. I swear. Like, how's he gonna go in front and be like, "Oh, we're not trying to play fantasy football here"? Like, he's literally the best player on your team. Drake London's great, but like Kyle Pitts is a freak. Like, throw him the goddamn ball. Like, I don't even know how you could just say like it's not fantasy football. Like, look at the dude. Look at him. He's like. He runs a 4.4 and he's like 6'5", like, and he's thick. Like, the dude is just a monster. Like, I just don't get it. Like,
and he's also tight end 35 right now.
He has
There's
like
32 teams.
It just pissed me off when he said that. Like, it's Javonte Williams all over again. Just if you want to win football games, play the guys that are gonna help you win football games. Target the guys that are gonna help you win football games. Like. Imagine what they're going to do as an offense if Drake London and Kyle Pitts are both getting targets. Like, I just don't get it.
But they won't be able to get their quarterback of the future if they throw it to both of them.
Like, are they purposely not throwing the ball because they want to draft Caleb Williams first overall next year? Because like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like,
so as an optimist on the Kyle Pitts train still. The biggest concern that I had in week 1 was that Kyle Pitts, if you think about what he did last year, they pretty much used him as a wide receiver exclusively, and he was a tight end really only by label. Week 1, he got 52% of his snaps at wide receiver, and he blocked on 20% of passes, which you think of like, who even other than London do they even have? Like, absolutely no one. So it's like to have him blocking on a fifth of any of your plays is like absolutely absurd. That being said, he still got 7 targets, which was tied for first on the team with London. Moving to week 2, we saw some better underlying numbers. So he was 75% of the time snapped at wide receiver, and he only blocked on 8.5% of passing snaps. He only got 3 targets, but that was second on the team. They didn't throw the ball a lot. It was just a weird game scripted thing. So I'm here to say that if you have invested in Kyle Pitts, yes, be upset about it. Yes, we can be mad about it, but there's still good things to come. I think that they know that they need to get him more involved in the offense, and I think it's only a matter of time that that's going to happen. I still think that he is the focal point of the offense at this point, and he's also getting the most of the attention from defenses, which has allowed Drake London to flourish a little bit. But he's honestly shown some real flash, and I think they're going to start to respect London a little bit more, which will make Kyle Pitts' life a little bit easier. So don't trade him at a low point
Buy
value
low.
right now. Buy low if you
Buy
can.
low.
I think that so buy low. I think a lot of people are frustrated,
I
but I do think that he turns his.
I submitted like.
I do think he turns the season around for sure. So
he started slow last year too. He did, but
yeah.
It's just,
but he's definitely not living up to where you drafted him at when you kind of had him as that third tight end behind. You've seen what Andrews did last week, 26 points. Kelsey is consistently performing. Everybody's like, all right, well, Pitts had 1,000 yards last year. Let's make it happen.
Andrews had 26 points last week?
Yeah.
Was Tyler Huntley playing quarterback?
Yes.
Got him.
He actually got hurt and you missed it. No, come on. Lamar had 60 points last week. The ball's
he was
going to
a
go
dog.
somewhere.
And lost. It was like the best thing ever.
Oh, while we're on that quick, though, Rashad Bateman, is he a sell high? Because he's not getting enough targets, and I think his routes are down. They're running a lot of guys out there, Devin Duvernay and...
Listen, don't even bring that man up.
Hold on.
You sat here and looked at me and said, Duvernay is going to outdo Mark Andrews this year.
No, I didn't. When did I say that?
You said that last week. You said, what if it's the Bateman and Duvernay show?
No, I didn't say he would outdo them. I'm talking about them together. Like, chill. Chill out. No, seriously. He's had 2 long touchdowns, but if you take those away, those fluky plays, he was essentially nothing. And if that trend sort of continues and he's big play dependent, you might be holding on to a guy that's eventually going to crash and burn on you, or you can get a lot of value right now because everybody's seeing what his totals are.
Yeah, I guess it depends on like what you can get back for him. He's getting a 21.1% target share in the first 2 games. He's gotten 0 looks in the red zone, which I think is interesting because coming out of college, like he was known to be like pretty precise route runner. So you would think like in those tighter situations that he'd be able to make that happen. But they also have had a lot of big plays with Lamar this year. They haven't really had a lot of time in the red zone at all, it feels like. But he's only participating in 76% of routes. And then his target quality isn't all that fantastic either. That being said, his expected fantasy points per game, according to playerprofiler.com, is currently sitting at 15.3. He's actually averaged 17.4 points per game, so it's not that drastic of a like outlier as it looks. But to your point on the big plays, his ADOT right now is 16.1. The sweet spot usually for receivers, especially like in a PPR format, is going to be right around 12. So I think that he's somebody that I enjoy having the flex because you know that big play potential is there. But if I can improve my team or if I have other capable options, then yeah, I would explore that opportunity. I don't think that's a bad move at all.
I have Bateman actually in Dynasty. So in Dynasty, I'm not doing anything with him. He's staying.
Yeah, it's a redraft. consideration.
But speaking of receivers, we can kind of transition that. Rookie wide receivers, obviously, another topic that we wanted to talk about. Drew, or Joe, I'm sorry. Why don't you start this time since you let Drew go first with the pits?
Yeah, sure. So if we're looking at the fantasy landscape and like where players are at, there's a lot of rookie receivers that have actually dominated so far. So if you look at Garrett Wilson, he had a huge week last week. Drake London has done quite well for himself, and Dotson has had 3 touchdowns in 2 games. So what I was curious to get some input on is like, where do y'all think that these players end up? Do you think that this is a flash in the pan? Do you think that they can have that sustainable success? I think personally for me, I think the person that I worry about the most out of those 3 is Jahan Dotson, just because he is on the field quite often. I think he's leading the Commanders in snap counts. However, he's only getting 6 targets a game, and he's been consistently like the 3rd or 4th target getter on that team. So if he is not going to be getting the touches that Wilson and London have had, I don't know how sustainable that's going to be. And then you also have Burks that's kind of come on, and then we still haven't seen anything from Williams because of the injury. So
what about Chris Olave?
Yeah,
Chris Olave. Yeah, he had a great game too. He was kind of invisible week 1. It was like, all right, like, is he going to be behind Landry and Thomas? But he actually paced the team in targets. He seemed like he was open pretty much every play on Sunday, and Jameis was feeding the ball a lot. I think the biggest thing, at least from the New Orleans perspective, is what is that rib injury going to do for Jameis? It sounds like he's playing with like 4, or maybe it's his back. He's like 4.
He has 5 or 4 broken vertebrae in his back.
Right, that's what it is. Yeah, so like I can't imagine that feels good. So what does that mean
everywhere
for the passing? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because, well, like you, I would say that like Jahan Dotson is the guy to me that's going to drop off if there's one of them out of that group. It's crazy because, like, from a real life perspective, I didn't love this draft class. I didn't think that there was like any true number 1 receivers that were going to come out of it. I liked a lot of them as like complementary pieces as number 2s, number 3s, but to see the amount of guys from this draft class already kind of dominating targets the way that they are, I'm surprised by that. Obviously, like in Atlanta, Drake London not really competing with anybody, not named Kyle Pitts, and even where, we just had a whole topic on Kyle Pitts. Yeah, so I'm a little bit surprised by the number of targets that we're seeing so far from these rookie wide receivers and these offenses.
Yeah. I mean, Curtis Samuel has struggled with injuries the last few years. So I think that that's going to heavily impact if Jahan Dotson holds up or not. But like you said, he's playing 99% of the snaps, and he's on the field the most out of all those wide receivers. So if the opportunity is there and he's on the field, he's going to get his targets. But they do have 4 heads that they got to feed in Washington. Logan Thomas came on really well in week 2. So that remains to be seen if they can stay healthy and if Wentz could even keep the track that he's been going on, because you know how Carson Wentz is. Drake London's going to continue to explode. I think Garrett Wilson really showed up on Sunday and showed that they need to give him the ball more. But the concern is, how is that going to change when Zach Wilson comes back? Because like he hasn't.
Zach Wilson should not come back on the field. If it was like who's performing better and what we've seen, Flacco should ride that out as long as they can. Flacco is 3rd in the league in passing right now. Like,
but there's no way
only behind Wentz and Tua.
Yeah, there's no way you
like,
can
come on
justify that though, because he's supposed to be your future. How do you go to Unibrow?
No, yeah.
So like,
and that's the problem.
Yeah, I still think that they're gonna make him a focal point in the offense, and they're gonna tell Wilson to throw it to him. But whether or not he's gonna do it successfully remains to be seen. I'm really high on Treyland Burks. I was high on Treyland Burks when I came into the season. You guys know that, mainly because I felt like the opportunity was there more so than anyone else. But he's only run 30 routes all season, and he still leads the team in targets and receptions. So he's a guy right now that I'm trying to acquire as much as possible, because I think it's only a matter of time till he starts to get more snaps, and those targets and receptions are going to turn into like 9 to 10 targets a game rather than like the 5 to 6 that he's getting, and he has a real opportunity. And their defense looks terrible. Like their team as a whole looks terrible. Derrick Henry looks terrible. They're going to be down a lot, and they're going to have to throw. So I like Treyland Burks. He's available in over 50% of leagues. So I think he's a guy that he's going to clear waivers tonight, I think, because he's only run 30 routes all year. But like he's a guy I'm trying to get tomorrow morning as soon as I wake up.
Yeah, 30 routes, 11 targets. He's had 7 catches for 102 yards. So it's really a matter of, and we talked about this at the beginning of the season when we were talking about drafts. Their offensive line is completely different than it's been in the years past.
It's gonna
They're
look even
bottom
different next
5 in
week,
the
probably.
Yeah. And
yeah,
Taylor
because their left
Lewan got
tackle
hurt.
went out. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's going to be brutal for them. They do have a really good matchup on the ground this coming week against Vegas. So there is some hope. The Vegas defense hasn't looked all that great. But
But if
yeah,
they score points again, like they have the capability to score a lot of points, so they could fall behind early, and they haven't shown like in years past where Derrick Henry would still get the ball in negative game scripts. So that's a concern.
yeah, both of those defenses are terrible though. So take the over on that game.
Yeah.
There you go. Some Platts picks betting advice from Joe Frick.
God sucks at betting.
How about some waiver options? Although Drew, you might have just mentioned one. Would you consider, Treyland Burks then one of like your waiver options?
Honestly, depending on your league, there's not a single guy that I'm targeting that I'm going to waste a waiver position on, but there's a lot of guys that I want to wake up at 4 a.m. and quickly grab.
Okay.
You're one of those guys, for real?
I'm one of those guys. I will go right back to bed. I set my alarm and I get up and I grab it and I go back to bed. But Noah Brown, he's still only owned in 0.8% of leagues. That's for ESPN. I think he's like 2% on Yahoo. We told you about him last week. He popped off for like 21 points this week. Evan Ingram is only owned in 17% of leagues on ESPN, and he had 8 targets last week, 7 receptions, and he ran 85% of the routes. Like, that's a guy that you need to get on your bench because Trevor Lawrence is starting to step up, and Christian Kirk's going to get more attention. Evan Ingram's going to be a guy. And it was also funny. I read a tweet today where someone said that if Evan Ingram is getting this target share and he's getting 90% of his targets as completions, like he's catching the football, and they actually referred to him as a reliable pass catcher, but I thought was hilarious. So hopefully that keeps up.
Since when?
Since his rookie year, maybe.
Yeah. And then the other guy I'm looking at is Tyler Algier. He's only owned in 14% of leagues, but he's split right down the middle with Cordell Patterson. They don't want Cordell Patterson to be the guy. And I think that if you can get ahead of that committee, I think eventually he's going to take on more of the load than Cordell Patterson. I think he's going to be like a 60-40 guy when he starts to develop and get used to playing in an NFL style offense.
It was interesting to see because he was inactive.
32?
Yeah, he's 32. And Damien
Williams
was
inactive week 1, wasn't he?
Damian Williams went on IR though, and it completely flipped the switch. So that's why I'm trying to get ahead of what I think could happen with Tyler Algier and Treyland Burks, because I just think that in the next few weeks they're going to continue to take another step.
Well, I think that's an important thing to think about, right? Like now that we're getting into the season and seeing like how rosters are constructed and like who are players on your bench that you realistically feel that like they will have a use for your team. Like if you have guys that are just putting up like 4 or 5 points a game, is it really worth hanging on to them if you never could feel confident playing them? I would say you probably want like 1 or 2 of those guys just for injury's sake. But realistically, it's like, all right, if you're 2-0, then it's like, all right, great. Like you can stash for the future and kind of get ahead of the curve before, especially if you're in like a waivers that's like reverse based off of standings. Yep. And then if you're losing, it's like, well, shit, you better get some wins in because you ain't going to be having nothing to play for if you keep losing games. So.
Right.
If anybody plays in fab leagues too, I wouldn't wait till tomorrow. Just throw a couple bucks down each guy. You should have no problems getting them. But in terms of Evan Ingram, I just want to add this too. Cole Kmet has been an absolute disappointment. And if he's on your roster, there is no reason why you don't go get Evan Ingram and just drop Cole Kmet, because they've thrown 28 times in 2 games.
It's absurd.
It's
like, why would you trade up, get Justin Fields, and then you already don't let him throw the ball? Like, is he that
nothing
bad?
to support him.
They did have bad weather in both games, so I'm hoping that we can just throw that out in week 3 and they actually start throwing the football. But like, it did happen 2 weeks in a row. So until we see otherwise, how are you supposed to, trust anything with them?
Boom.
You can get Justin Jefferson for anything.
I don't know.
There's no other Jeffersons in the league, right? Like, this isn't like for Van Jefferson or something.
It's
like that.
We're actually going to pick up Tony Jefferson.
Yeah, unless this is like, I don't even know what this would have to be. -5 points per reception.
I would
Something
still
like
take
that,
Jefferson.
They were terrible last night, and he still scored 12 fantasy points and was solid.
Yeah, right.
And if he doesn't run the wrong route, he probably has a touchdown. He's ended up in the 20s too.
Yeah, he was responsible for one of those interceptions, but Kirk was god awful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what other Jefferson that could be. Justin Jefferson, 100%. Actually, that's where we're at with the show, though. Some start sit stuff. So, any more questions that you guys might have, I guess if it's also trade or anything like that, you can throw them in here. I am 0-2 in 3 different leagues and 1-1 in my other one. So maybe I should be the one asking start sit questions on the show.
It's possible. I'm not in a much better space than you are. My bench was amazing last week. I had like tons of points on my bench. It was unbelievable. I had Tua and a couple benches. I was like, well, this is fun.
I had 2 on my bench as well. But like, so I would have won had I started him, but I still got 35 or whatever from Carson Wentz. So I was like, okay,
yeah, hard to be mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm 2-0 in 4 leagues. And
Oh, this guy.
in 3. I beat you by 1 point, even though you thought you won when you went to bed.
I did win when I went to bed. Something happened overnight. I'm not pointing any fingers, but
You're the commish.
so Tua is on waivers in my one league.
He's on waivers in a lot, actually.
Yeah, and my only quarterback I have currently on my roster is Kirk Cousins because of Trey Lance's injury.
I'd probably go keep both, though. I think that Kirk Cousins is going to be really good.
No, yeah, keep both, but I should drop somebody else to get Tua.
Right.
Yeah, on the across platforms, Tua is owned in 63.6% of leagues.
Yeah, it's not enough.
Mm-hmm. I just played Tyler. He just commented and said what his record was. I just played him, I think, in one of the leagues this week. So you're welcome for that. that easy win.
I mean, Joe Flacco only owned in 1.6% of leagues, QB 10 right now.
There we go.
So somebody that we talked about before the show, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit with the Cole Kmet stuff. What are y'all doing with Darnell Mooney right now?
Holding.
Great question, because I also have him on my. He's kind of in like that flex consideration, but I'm not considering him right now. But like he was the guy I went into thinking he was going to be my flex. Is what I'm getting at here. I'm now playing Christian Kirk in that spot. I also have like Cordero Patterson on my bench or Brandon Ayuk. So I have some other options. Like Darnell Mooney doesn't need to play, but yeah. I'm definitely. You guys know how high I was on Darnell Mooney going into last year. And especially expecting another step from him and Justin Fields this year. So I'm very disappointed with his start to the season. But to Drew's point about the way the first 2 weeks have gone weather-wise for Chicago, I'm hoping it's more a product of that than anything else.
I actually didn't own Darnell Mooney in any leagues last year, but then I bought into your hype, and now I have him in 50% of my leagues. So this is actually all your fault, and screw both of you.
Yeah, we got a 2-parter. I'm rocking Jefferson, Devontae, Gabe, Mooney, London, Samuel, Osborne as a JJ handcuff, and Jameson on IR. My RBs are Ramondre, Walker, Strong. Oh my god, what is this? Homer, P. Ryan, Abdullah, Rashad White. Would you trade Samuel to fix this position or not because of Gabe being hurt and Mooney sucking? Man, did that hurt to me.
So if we go back to the first part,
yeah,
the running back situation is shit on this team. Let's just get that out of the way. It happens,
for sure.
But you have a lot of good things that you can do to load up on this on the flip of that. Mooney is not going to return a lot of value. I would say that your best 2 trade pieces are either going to be Gabe Davis or Drake London. Curtis Samuel also would be, but I think everybody kind of is holding the mentality that he's a sell high, when in reality he's the leading target getter for Washington, and I would almost rather have him and trade Gabe Davis, who has this perception of being in the high profile.
What if that's Deebo Samuel?
That's what I thought it was.
There's no way. I mean, I guess it could be, huh?
If he won his first 3 picks as receiver?
Yeah, it looks like a 0 RB.
Oh, it's Dynasty as well. Oh, okay. It is Curtis.
Okay, you're right.
Okay. Well, shit. Well, Dynasty is like a whole different boat.
Curtis Samuel. Try to get a running back.
I would trade Davis if it was me, because you all know that I'm not really big on Gabe Davis. He's the wide receiver too.
Every
He's
week.
23 years old, and Stephon Diggs is 28 approaching 30 or 29 approaching 30. In 2 years, he might be the number one. That's why I love him so much in Dynasty.
Sure.
I see him as the number one down the line.
Something that you could potentially do too, I think that Osborne is a waste of a roster spot, honestly, even in a dynasty setting. Adam Thielen's not even doing anything for the Vikings in these first 2 weeks, and he's on the field every single time. So unless one of those two guys gets hurt, Osborne's not going to be the guy, and I don't think he's going to be around. Yeah, but if
Drew's wrong about the Diggs thing. Justin Jefferson is going to be unhappy in Minnesota like Diggs was and get traded to Buffalo.
All right. Well,
my point being is that I think that Curtis Samuel actually has some tread on him, and I like that. I think Devonta Smith is a really interesting dynasty trade piece in Philly, just because they brought in A.J. Brown. Devonta's been on the field a lot and kind of holds that value just from being the Heisman Trophy guy, but he's the clear number 2 on that offense. And A.J. Brown just signed that deal, so it's like, can Jalen Hurts hold both of those two to return like that value that they used to have? Maybe, but he's also, I think he holds more value than like Gabe Davis does. But I don't know. If it was me, I would trade Gabe Davis. You could feel otherwise, but yeah. Or you trade someone lesser, or if you don't have the confidence that I do in Samuel, then obviously, yeah, he's somebody probably has the optimism that I do and would buy into it.
Jared, another one that's not CEH. So
J-Rod.
He's realizing that CEH wasn't funny the first 2 times, so if it doesn't hit the first 2 times, then you let it go.
Should I get Jimmy G in waivers? Yes.
I mean, you can. Obviously, anytime there's a starting QB on waivers in a 2 QB league, you want that.
Right.
Especially when Ryan Tannehill's name just got thrown out here.
Yes. That being said, Jimmy G has a pretty tough matchup against Denver. As bad as their offense has been, their defense has been excellent. They're only giving up 14.6 points per game to QBs so far this season. If we're looking at the other matchups that are available, Russell Wilson actually has a worse matchup against San Francisco, so not feeling too confident there. Wentz is a must-play, in my opinion. Philly has been giving up 23.5 points per game. They're like a top 12 option. Let me see here what the number actually is. So they're 12th in points per game. And then actually Tannehill has a pretty good matchup against Vegas. They're giving up 26.5 points per game. And they are currently looking at that 8th spot coming in. So if you don't get Jimmy G, I would be having Wilson ride the pine. I have no confidence in him and his corn dog mentality. If you do get Jimmy G, if you feel that they can break through that offense against Denver, it is a home game, then maybe you can. I would ride with Tannehill and Wentz if it was me.
I was just thinking about how funny it would be if someone made a video where the Steelers line up with Gunnar Olszewski outside with Najee in the backfield as a clear run play, and then they just have Russell Wilson on the sideline just yelling run. I wish I was like able to do anything with a computer to like get that to happen, but I think that would be funny as hell. I don't know why that popped in my head.
Start sit Connor David Montgomery. Assuming this is James Connor, Tyler, I really appreciate you doing the Pittsburgh thing and spelling his last name wrong. I just want to let you know that. But we talked about the injury.
You have to play David Montgomery because he's the only thing in Chicago that's right now. So you have to play him.
Where are these guys coming at?
He's averaging over 100 yards a game, I think, right on the ground.
He is, and Houston's giving up 27.4 points per game to running backs in the first couple of weeks. The Rams are only giving up 13.5. There is some hope there that from a pass catching perspective that they could do a little bit more. just because LA has been horrendous against the past. They're giving up 51.2 points per game against wide receivers and 28.9, which is weird because they have that Jalen Ramsey guy that used to be good at football. But it is what it is. So regardless if he's playing or not, I would start Montgomery.
Yeah. I agree. Sorry, his next comment threw me off.
He did.
Yeah, you spelled that right.
Yeah,
that was good
right.
to me. Do we want to pull up Drew's DFS?
Yeah, let's do that because I have something for my D of the week.
Hold on, we actually had one more question. Mooney situation. Nagy sucked, Mooney feasted. Fields look improved this year marginally. Is this purely game plan? I mean, let me pull up the what's it called?
I am holding on for dear life to the weather narrative.
I think that's what it is, honestly. Like the first game was just they were essentially playing in the middle of a pond. And then the second one, I think it was raining pretty hard that game, right? I was watching that on my phone, to be honest with you. So,
yeah. So in 2021, they threw the ball 55.81% of the time. Going into the first two games of this year, they've thrown the ball 34.02% of the time. So they're really not throwing the ball at all. Receivers were only targeted seven times in week 2, which is like, even if they threw all of those to Mooney, like it's just not really good recipe for success. I don't think we're in a situation where we can drop them just because they have to start throwing the ball at some point. And I think that Mooney will be the guy because they don't really have anybody else there, but he's like a last spot on the bench for me at this point. So.
Joe,
tell him later.
Who's
your favorite defensive play this week?
Who is my favorite defensive play? Let me see here. Given everything that's going on right now, I do really like San Francisco quite a bit against the Broncos. A couple of other teams that probably have a better chance of being on the waiver wire this week. I hate to say it, but the Browns against the Steelers. We all know how great the Steelers' offense is on a short week.
I would still worry about, though. There's a good chance Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett are both out this week for the Browns.
Yeah, will Najee be able to find the hole? Who knows? If you don't feel confident as a Steelers fan and you were looking for other options, some other plays that you have, the Giants versus the Cowboys, even though the Cowboys were able to do well against the Bengals last week, backup quarterback, Zeke hasn't really done a lot on the ground. They don't really have a lot of options outside of CeeDee Lamb. The Giants would be a good pick. And then the last
Noah
one.
Brown. Why do we got to keep talking about this?
We will not respect Noah Brown in this house. And then let's see. You could also go Chiefs versus the Colts if they're available. The Colts look absolutely horrendous.
Chad likes the Jags, depending on what's going on with Justin Herbert.
Yeah, if Herbert's not playing, then for sure. The Jags actually had a great game last week with the shutout. Their defense looks well improved, which you'd expect when you take the number one guy as a defensive player. So if Herbert isn't playing, then I would immediately shoot that a lot more upwards.
Okay. Trade away Tua for CD.
I would say it depends on what the other quarterback that you have is, but CD's averaged 11 targets per game. He's had 11 in both games, actually, so do the math. That's 11 average. He's really the only thing that offense has. I don't think that he's going to be I don't know if he's a top 10 play this year, but he's definitely like a solid wide receiver, too, that has that upside to have those flash games. So I like that trade. You're trading high on Tua. And he's had a pretty soft schedule so far. So I think this week will be a very good test to see what Tua is made of. If they're able to do anything in Buffalo, then it's like, all right, like they're cooking with gas. Like, we really need to start taking this team seriously. But if he falls apart again, then it's like, all right, like maybe it was just more of a schedule so far kind of thing. So I would sell high on a quarterback every time. You can always trade a lesser player for another QB that'll give decent results later.
Yeah, I'm fully on board with this trade. Like, even with CeeDee Lamb not living up to expectations, I think we all kind of feel the same way about quarterbacks and getting production from that position when it comes to fantasy. So,
he'll bounce back when Dak comes back. It's simple as
Yeah.
that. You can have him back in 2 or 3 weeks, and
this might be the most Drew DFS lineup I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you got Damien Pierce here, you got St. Brown here, you got Treyland Burks, and you got your boy Greg Dortch. So,
yeah.
I love that you make this in Snapchat too, by the way.
I just talked to you about a video. I have no idea what I'm doing. Snapchat.
Oh, I thought this was Pixar, to be honest with you. I didn't know this was Snapchat.
Snapchat stickers, baby, for the win.
All right, let's go through this.
Okay, so quarterback position has been very tough for me lately when setting DFS lineups. Their prices are just way too high right now for all the quarterbacks that you want. So when I was looking at quarterback, it was essentially between Carson Wentz at 6,300, Jared Goff 5,800, Kyler Murray at 7,300, and I did consider Jalen Hurts at 7,600 just because he's been so incredible, but I had to see how the rest of my roster would fill out before I went with my quarterback.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How much was Mac Jones?
I had him as an option. I did think about him. He is very cheap, but when I got through the rest of my roster, I just felt like Tua at his price point fit better. But I did look into that as well. I do think Mac Jones is a sleeper versus the Ravens because they've been terrible. The Ravens.
They've been the worst team against receivers, and so if I was going to DFS this week, I would be taking the Jacoby Myers Mac stack.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, there will definitely be a DFS lineup where I do that stack for sure because I usually do like 5 a week, and you need to vary them. But I went with Tua in this one. I think that game's just going to be sneaky high scoring. I just think that the Bills are going to jump up on them just like the Ravens did, and then Tua is going to be forced to throw it. And we saw what happened last week when he was forced to throw it. He had like 20 points going into the fourth quarter, and he ended up with nearly 60. So
also, Buffalo's defense has been very good, and not saying that they won't be, but they're going to be missing probably a couple pieces from their secondary.
Exactly. Yeah. And I just think it's going to be a battle between Jordan Poyer and determining which wide receiver he wants to cover in the middle of the field. And it's hard to cover both of those guys. And it's just Tua's going to score points. He doesn't have to be pretty. They don't need to win. He just needs to score in fantasy for this to matter. And then with Joe Mixon, the team just looks terrible throwing the ball. I just think that they need to settle down. I know they're handing the ball off to Mixon a lot, but I feel like until they get the run game going, they're not going to be able to get the passing game going because edge rushers are just flying up the field and just getting after Burrow. So
then the Jets have also been the 8th worst team against running backs in the league so far this season. So I like that.
And he is averaging 23 carries a game. So it's hard to find any running back in fantasy that you can get 23 carries from on a weekly basis.
No, for sure.
So I liked him. And then Damien Pierce, he took over the snap and carry count last week, finally. Mm-hmm. And he didn't score a touchdown, but he had a pretty solid week on the ground. He was averaging almost 5 yards a carry. If he gets into the end zone this week, which he has a good matchup, I believe, against the Bears. Bears defense is obviously terrible. I could see him paying off at his $5,000 price point. And because I was able to settle with the $5,000 in my RB2, I paid up for Joe Mixon. I felt like that was a good balance. Amon-Ra St. Brown's going for a record, and how can you sit him in any format? He's still underpriced. He's 7,200, but the other receivers are going like 8,000 to 9,000. He's still like 10th in pricing. So I was like, I'm going to jump all over that opportunity for him to get another 12 targets. And I think he had a good matchup as well against the Vikings. That could be a sneaky high-scoring game. So I liked Amon-Ra St. Brown. I went with the Tua Jalen Waddle stack. This is easy. You got to get one stack in there. Tyreek Hill was priced at like 8,500. I saved myself 2,000 by going with Jalen Waddle. Treyland Burks, I essentially had to punt on my third wide receiver just because I paid up on Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jalen Waddle. Treyland Burks is leading the team in targets and receptions. We talked about that earlier. So I felt like maybe I can get a week early on him. And if he pops off this week in a high-scoring game with the Raiders, that could be a sneaky play. And then this is my guy of the week, Tyler Higby. So Tyler Higby.
I like that. 29.1 points per game allowed by Arizona in the first 2 weeks.
First week, they were the worst against tight ends. Second week, they were second. And I did look at the fact that they played Travis Kelce and Darren Waller, but Tyler Higby is getting elite target production. He is 11th in the league in targets.
It's crazy. And they've also, I was actually looking at this earlier. They hadn't put the stats in just yet, but they are using him in the slot a lot more compared to last year. So if you look at from this year to last year, in the 2 games, actually, they might have just been a week 1 thing, but he's in the slot about 16% of the time. It was 26% in week 1, which was up like 12% from last year. But if you're looking at his routes run, he's 4th in the league for tight ends. His route participation, he's number 6. And his snap participation, he's number 2. He's the most targeted tight end in football right now. And he's getting 25% of red zone targets. So it seems like he is currently the second guy in that offense. Cooper Kupp's obviously going to be that number 1. But it seems like he's supplanted and taken over that secondary role. I know we ranked him pretty high, but that matchup against Arizona, he should feast.
Yeah, best matchup in fantasy football for tight ends, and he was the 7th priced tight end. I don't see how you could put anyone else in that lineup at tight end at his price point. But if you do decide to go with like a Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford stack, the other option I would put out there is Gerald Everett because he was 8th price, and I still think that that's a good guy to put in your lineup based on his price point. And then I paid up on a lot of guys, so my flex spot I essentially had like 4,000 left, and it just took me all the way down the list. Greg Dortch is the only guy in that range that's getting targets and productive targets. I still worry about him. It's mostly a joke playing him. Don't play him in redraft because he's like 4th in terms of Kyler Murray's targets. But in that range, if you have to find a guy, Greg Dortch is your best option. He's getting targets in the red zone, and they're going to score. They're going to have to score a lot because their defense has been absolutely terrible. And then finally, the Buccaneers defense, they were priced at 9th, which I thought was insane. I think that everybody's looking at this matchup against Green Bay as like to be scared of, but I think that their corners outside are going to be able to line up one-on-one with those wide receivers that have been extremely disappointing. And if they just sell out on the run, which they're essentially already a good run defense, I could see Green Bay getting shut out in this game. And I could see the Buccaneers going over the next 5 weeks. I think they play the Chiefs, but other than that, there's a ton of teams that they're just going to keep shutting out. They're going to
Pittsburgh.
They play the Steelers in like 2 weeks. Yeah, like do you see them scoring on Tampa Bay? I don't. And like I said, they were the 9th price defense. I thought it was a no-brainer to hit Tampa Bay in my lineup.
Their defense is why. If they go on a run this year, I think it's going to be because of their defense more than their offense.
Because Tom Brady looks like he just rolled out of bed and like his deathbed. Like the dude looks terrible. He looks like he got a nose job that went wrong and his cheeks got sucked in. So the defense is the only thing that's keeping them in games.
That man is rolling up to games in a hearse instead of a car.
Real quick, completely different note. So this was another question we got from chat.
I guess
here.
It relates to fantasy as well, just because we're talking about a running back, an RB1, but I think this is more of like a real life question.
Oh yeah. I do not have any inside info in my own life.
Honestly,
so
it makes sense. I don't know if it's being talked about, but I don't know that it will. If this were any other sport, it's just in the NFL, you don't see trades like this happen. Yeah. But should they consider it? Sure.
Do you want him though as another team? Like he doesn't look like he recovered from his foot injury from last year, which doesn't make sense to me because it's not the type of injury that should linger into your the next year. Like he just doesn't. I was watching the game last night and he didn't look good. Like I was thinking about he has a good matchup this week that maybe you could try to get someone to trade for him in fantasy because I don't trust him later on this year.
It's tough because we've also talked about
game.
Yeah, like after this week. After this week. Yeah, I was dead wrong on this. I was thinking about him as potential being an RB1 this year, like RB overall 1. Like he just does not look the same.
Yeah, it's tough too because we've also talked about the fall from grace for the offensive line as a whole. So, like, how much does that go on him and how much does it go on the offensive line, the lack of production in the run game? Also, when you don't have weapons on the outside and Tannehill's playing the way he has, and people can zero in on him even more than they have in the past. I don't know. It's to answer this question, though.
Unlikely.
Yeah, I find it unlikely. But to me, with the Titans being where they're at, looking as bad as they have, I think they should consider it.
I just don't know what you would get with his contract being so big. He's coming off the injury. It's not like he's playing well and like they're trying to get some value from him. It's like no one's going to want to pick that up.
I think that Tannehill is his job, and not because Malik Willis should take it. It's a matter of they probably look like they're going to pick in the top 10 this year, and they got to see if Malik Willis is their guy or not. There's 3 quarterbacks at the top of the draft next year that they're going to have to consider. I think that this team's going to completely fall apart.
If they haven't already. Also, shout out Tyler Palka for this last comment here. It's a name that I haven't heard in a long time.
I feel like that's where we need to end the show, a Tyler Palka reference. There's no better way to do it.
What more could there be said?
All right, that was a good show. A lot of input from the comments, obviously, from Chad and everybody else. Very active chat today. I'm assuming, do you guys have anything else, or just
hopefully Gabby and Rachel will find their love tonight on the season finale of The Bachelorette?
Sure. We had it all figured out with the Palco stuff, and then you throw this.
He's still there.
Throw this crap at me. Come on, man.
Gabby was a cheerleader for the Denver Broncos, so it all ties in.
All right, big week for Russ coming up.
Yeah, huge.
But did she yell run or pass before a play?
One last thing that I do want to mention, actually, though, is this show goes out now as a podcast as well. So Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever you want to get your podcast, you can find us there. The link tree for all that information is in the bio of our Twitter at AT412FF show. Also follow around the 412, follow the guys' individual Twitters as well. You can get at us on Sunday mornings before. We'll answer questions throughout the week, all that good stuff. Start, sit, waiver wire, trades, whatever you guys need, get at us. And when I say us, I mean Joe, of course. But until next week, we will talk to you guys then. For Smitty, for Joe, for Drew, this has been the Around the 412 Fantasy Football Show, and we'll talk to you then. Bye-bye.
Get them dubs, baby.
Good luck.